Hi, everybody. Brad Truex here again from Eastman's Woodlands and Wildlife Committee. And today we're continuing our series on the trees of Eastman. Today we're going to talk about beech trees. There's a beautiful beech tree. In many parts of Eastman, American beech is actually the most common tree species. They're very shade tolerant. They like moist soil. They can grow as high as 50 to 80 feet tall, although most of them are much smaller than that. And they have broad crowns, and in the fall, their golden bronze leaves really contribute to our beautiful fall foliage. Their roots and their stumps can produce shoots that lead to new trees, and they can live as long as 300 to 500 years old. So they're really long-lived trees. They're known as climax species. What that means is that they become a dominant tree in very mature forests that really haven't been disturbed. And they can persist for very long periods without being replaced by other species. And most importantly, beech nuts that are made by the beech trees are a very important food source for much of our wildlife. There are several things that help us identify beech trees. First of all, the branch and bud pattern is an alternate pattern. Again, it's not an opposite pattern like we would see with maples and ash trees. The buds also have a very distinctive appearance. I'll show you some pictures of the buds in a minute. The leaf pattern is simple. The leaves are marcescent in fall and winter. We'll talk a little bit about marcescence as well. And the bark is very smooth. And most importantly, you may see some beech nuts. So those are a variety of ways that we identify beech trees. And the beech nuts, again, are a form of hard mass that really serves as a very critical food source for black bears and a number of wildlife species. This is showing the leaves. The beech leaves, again, are elliptical. They have a simple pattern. They feel kind of leathery, and they have very small teeth. You can kind of see these little notches along the outside. And in the fall, they turn yellow, tan, or bronze, and then brown. And they may remain on the trees throughout the fall and winter. That's what's known as marcescence. Beech leaves can also be easily confused with yellow birch leaves. And again, the top are the beech leaves, the bottom are the birch leaves. And certainly from any sort of a distance, you really can't tell the difference between these. Okay, marcescence. You've heard us talk about these, this phenomenon with oak trees. Some trees don't drop all their leaves in fall. They maintain some leaves. So the leaves turn from green to tan or yellow or brown, but they stay attached to the branches throughout the winter. And this is called marcescence. And there are really only a few species that do this. That's beech, oak, witch hazel, hornbeam, and hop hornbeam. So if you see leaves that are still on the trees in winter, really it's one of these 5 species. The younger trees are much more likely to be affected, and it's usually the lower portion of the tree on which these leaves are retained. If you look up higher in the leaves are gone. So again, marcescence is a good clue to tree identification in the winter. The top here is showing marcescent oak leaves, and the bottom, again, marcescent beech leaves. Why do some trees not drop their leaves in the fall? Well, there are lots of theories about this. I'm not going to go through all of them. Probably the most important one is this one, though. It's probably to protect the new buds from being eaten by browsing fauna like white-tailed deer and perhaps moose. This is probably the best guess as to what marcescence is all about. And then there is this longstanding myth or fact, we don't know, but back in the Ice Age, giant ground sloths were 20 feet tall, and they apparently used to browse buds and so on that were on the ends of the branches. And 20 feet tall is about the height at which marcescence disappears. So interesting. Okay, here are those beech buds that I said are very distinctive. If you look at them, they're long, They're narrow, they're scaly, and they're somewhat cigar shaped. So it's very helpful in tree identification. So if you see in the spring or even in the late winter something that looks like this, a pretty good idea that you're dealing with an American beech. Beech bark is very distinctive. The beech trees have very smooth bark. It's gray. Often there are some slight horizontal etchings, but the big thing is that it's usually very smooth. But if you see a tree that has initials or symbols or graffiti carved into it, it's very likely a beech tree. And that's simply because it's one of the few trees that has this very smooth bark. And many beech trees in New England have beech bark disease, which significantly alters the appearance. Certainly, we have a lot of beech bark disease here at Eastman, and this is what it looks like. Beech bark disease produces this discoloration and these little bumps and knots that occur on the tree. And it's caused by a combination of an insect and two pathogenic fungi. It creates kind of waxy white patches or fuzzy bumps on the bark. And it kills the beech trees, but only very, very slowly. Beech bark disease, the top one shows a tree that's severely affected with these severe cankers. And then the bottom shows what you might see in the fall. These are actually the fruiting bodies of the fungus that's causing beech bark disease. Okay, beech trees do produce shoots from both their roots and from cut stumps. And as a result, if a beech tree is cut down, it'll often send out numerous shoots from the stump and the roots, and that makes it very challenging to control the spread of the tree. We actually, several years ago, were considering doing some clear cutting in one of Eastman's forests. And we went out with one of the foresters from Sullivan County, and he pointed out that if we were to do clear cutting, there was a good chance that the beech might take over in the area where we clear cut because of these numerous shoots that will come up from the roots and the stump. And that might not be a desirable thing at that point. So are there uses for beech? Well, from a commercial standpoint, beeches aren't particularly good for timber. They do tend to rot fairly easily. However, beech wood does bend easily when it's steamed, so it's used for some furniture that requires bending. And it also makes pretty good firewood. But the biggest value of beech is not its commercial value, it's for its value as a food source for our wildlife. So what's the ecological value of beech? Well, beeches provide lots of shade, and that influences the growth of plants beneath them. But that shade can also prevent growth of other important trees like oak trees. They do provide habitat for many animal species. The trunks that rot can produce cavities that are used by some birds or some cavity-dwelling mammals. But once again, the biggest value of beech is production of beech nuts because they are a very important food source for our wildlife. So what are beech nuts? This is showing beech nuts. Here's some more ripened beech nuts. They're roughly triangular in shape. The shell is roughly triangular shaped, and inside you'll find 2 to 3 nuts. They're fairly easily opened. And the beech nuts fall from the beech trees in autumn. They have a very rich oil content. In addition to that fat content of almost 40%, they have many minerals, things like iron and zinc. And they really serve as a nutrient-dense food source for our bears, white-tailed deer, wild turkeys, ruffed grouse, wood ducks, woodpeckers, and more than a dozen other mammals and birds. They often have a bitter taste because of the tannins, and they may also contain a toxin called phagan. And like acorns, beech nuts also are produced in a cyclical pattern. More on that later. The beech trees do produce beech nuts every other year, which is a shorter cycle than oak trees producing acorns. But once about every 10 to 12 years, there are bust years for both beech nuts and acorns, and they coincide. And when they coincide, it really creates a crisis for many of the wildlife species that depend on them. So again, I have lots of beech trees all around me. So why am I not seeing all these beech nuts? Well, it takes a long time before a beech tree can make beech nuts. They actually have to be almost 40 years old before they make nuts. And large crops of beech nuts are produced when the beech trees are about age 60. And it's the age of the tree rather than the height of the tree that's the most important factor in their production of beech nuts. So beech nuts and bears, here's an interesting phenomenon. We all know that they are a favorite food for bears. They have about twice as much protein and calories per edible portion compared to acorns. And in some areas, there's a pattern of synchrony between the beech nuts and bear cub production. Think about that. In alternating years when beech nuts are scarce, the young females who were near breeding age wouldn't be as fat when they go into the den in winter, so they wouldn't give rise to any cubs. But in alternating years, when there are nut-rich conditions, they eventually will have cub litters, and the two tend to be in synchrony. So again, most of the cubs born in winter followed a good beech nut year. Very interesting. So when the cycles do collide, again, both beech trees and oaks have boom and bust cycles for production of beech nuts and acorns, respectively. And beech nuts, again, are produced by beech trees every other year, but oak trees produce acorns 4 out of every 5 years. That would be the white oaks. Red oaks produce acorns about every other year, but it takes 2 years for them to mature. And when those off-year cycles overlap, which historically occurs about every 8 to 12 years, there's going to be a dearth of hard mast out in the forest. So the wildlife has loss of very important food sources. And such an overlap occurred here in the fall of 2018 and the early winter of 2019. So there was what was called Squirrel-mageddon in 2019. That means lots of squirrels died in 2019. And moreover, in such doubly down years, the food source for bears dries up, and that sends them on the hunt into human-occupied areas for food. So much of the increase in bear-human interactions that we saw in 2022 was likely due to that dearth of hard mast in the forest. That, again, was a year when both acorns and beech nuts were having off years. So what's happened since 2022? Well, bear encounters peaked at Eastman in 2022, and in the fall of 2023 and through 2024 and early 2025, we had far fewer bear encounters. So what happened? Well, Eastman's board did pass some measures, such as not feeding the bears, bringing bird feeders in, securing trash and grills. That probably had a big effect. But probably just as important was the hard mast cycle. So once again, 2022 had been a bust year for both acorns and beech nuts, but 2023 was a boom year, or what's known as a mast year. So now the bear's favorite food in the fall was once again plentiful in the forest, so they had less need to forest near humans. But unfortunately, a few bears learned some bad habits and have passed them on to their cubs. So we still get some bear-human interactions here at Eastman. So there are threats to the beech trees, actually significant threats. We talked about beech bark disease. That's been here for many years. It really doesn't kill very many beech trees. If it does kill them, it takes many years for them to die. But on the other hand, beech leaf disease, which is caused by a roundworm, does kill beech trees. And beech leaf disease really just recently arrived here in New England. And it could lead to a loss of critical food source for many wildlife species in the future. This is showing leaves that are affected by beech leaf disease. Once again, it's different from beech bark disease, and it's caused by a nematode, a small roundworm. It was first noted in Ohio back in 2012. It probably originated from Japan and was probably carried here in some ornamental plants. And beech trees in Japan are not affected. Only those over here are affected. And in highly infested areas, this disease can kill up to 90% of the young trees in a period of just 2 to 5 years. So it's a significant threat. It really spreads at almost an unprecedented rate. And this tiny worm can be blown in aerosolized droplets. So, particularly on a very windy day after a heavy rain event, it might be carried. It can also be carried on the feet of birds. And it is a real threat to our forests. And in turn, if we were to lose those beech trees, it would threaten the over 40 wildlife species, especially the bears that rely on beech nuts as a rich food source. So again, beech leaf disease caused by a roundworm. Early manifestations are these dark bands on the beech leaf. But eventually, what happens is the leaves take on a sort of a waxy appearance and feeling, or a leathery feeling, and those patches really turn yellow. So here they were black banding, here it's yellow banding. And again, this is just a close-up showing, you can actually see the nematode there underneath the affected leaf. So once again, it is a real threat to our forests. Researchers are looking at ways to try to combat this disease. Potassium phosphide is a good treatment to protect the beech leaves from the roundworm, but it's really not economically feasible to treat every beech tree. Aspirin and methyl salicylate, which is an active component of wintergreen, show some promise, but once again, probably not feasible to apply that on a widespread basis. It's interesting that European beech trees are not susceptible to this disease. So some have suggested that eventually European beech trees might be a good alternative to replace American beech. However, since it takes about 40 years for a beech tree to begin to produce beech nuts, we really need some solutions right now. Otherwise, we're going to have some significant problems down the line. So that's a bit about beech trees. Hope that you're able to get something out of that. And